This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Samantha Bennett with the K-State Radio Network. Legacy is a key word that might come to mind for many when they think of the K-State crops judging team. The exceptional group of young students recently earned their 19th national title, and some of those students, along with their graduate student coach, Sarah Frye, share insight ahead on what it meant to earn this title as a team and their personal takeaways from the experience. Also, new assistant professor of crop science at K-State, Rachel Veenstra, joins us for a conversation about her new role. She was coined as the Tiller Queen during her studies at K-State, and she shares insight on her transition from those studies to now and her research focusing on the tricky subject of corn tillers. We end with Riley County horticulture agent Gregg Eyestone. He says planting and starting vegetable transplants from seed may be able to help satisfy an avid gardener's thirst to be doing some type of gardening this winter. That and more is coming up ahead on Agriculture Today. This is Agriculture Today. We are back now kicking off 2023 with a group of very exciting recent winners here at K-State, and those are students and a coach from our K-State Collegiate Crops Judging team. So we're going to introduce several of them now. Like I said, we have their coach, Sarah Frye. She is a graduate research assistant in agronomy here at K-State. So Sarah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. We also have with us Jarek Meyer. He is a junior studying Ag Econ. Jarek, thanks for being here.
Thanks for your time.
We also have Ellie Braun. She is a junior studying agronomy.
Hi, happy to be here.
And Ashley Chandler. She is also a junior studying agronomy.
Hey there. Thanks for having us today.
Absolutely. So I've kind of already ruined our punchline here, but you guys are recent national champions again here for K-State for the crops judging team. So that's incredible, Sarah.
Yeah, it's really exciting to keep the legend going, title of national championships going, especially with Dr. Donnelly not officially being here anymore. So it was kind of exciting to win this year.
Yeah, and you kind of hinted at it there, but there's a legacy of winning this program here at K-State. This is the 19th title win for K-State. That's incredible.
Yeah, so this is our 19th out of the past 24 years. That kind of includes Dr. Donnelly and the previous coaches. And there's a couple split titles in there. So this year, of course, is a split championship as well as the previous year.
Yeah, so let's start off explaining what does that mean. I sense some bitterness in the room before we hit record here, but what does a split title really mean in this competition?
Yeah, so this year for our split championship, the K-State Crops team, we won in the Kansas City contest, and then at the Chicago contest, we placed second to Iowa State. So we each won one. They're definitely our toughest competition, so it was good to win the one by so many points. We won by 200 points there, and then lost by about 20 points in Chicago. So a little bit of bitter loss, but we were glad to have a tough competition.
Absolutely. So Ellie, I'm sensing in our conversation that you believe you're the real winners here.
I mean, if you do the math, we probably did come out on top on that one, but split championship is fine by us.
Absolutely, especially when it's your 19th title. That's something to applaud for sure. And before we get into our conversation anymore, I figured we could start with, what does a collegiate crops judging competition really look like? Ashley, do you want to explain some of that to us?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you say collegiate crops judging to really anybody outside of our small circle of people who are really involved with it, there are a lot of questions about what does that actually look like? What do we actually do? Contrary to popular belief, we're not in the field, but we work in more of a lab type setting where we're evaluating samples of seed and looking for contaminants. We're evaluating samples of grain and determining the quality by assigning a grade and determining the factors that resulted in that grade. And we're identifying around 200 plant and seed ID samples in each contest.
Wow, incredible. So a lot of work that goes into this and a lot of studying from what I understand. So gearing up for this competition, what did that practice sort of look like, Jarek?
Yeah, so getting ready for the contest, you want to be competitive and be good at it. You have to do about the whole contest each week, so that might be 5 or 6 hours every week in the afternoon, and so it definitely takes a lot of time.
And commitment, I guess, when you're thinking about these are full-time students that are competing, so on top of your already busy course load as a student, this is just something else to add on. So why did you guys decide it was so important to get involved?
I took advantage of being involved with the collegiate crops team because I enjoy judging agronomy as a part of FFA and 4-H. And coming to K-State, I originally came as an agriculture education major. And when I learned about the opportunities in agronomy and the opportunities to get involved with the collegiate crops judging contest, that made me really excited. And that made me want to jump on board with agronomy full time so that I could really take advantage of all the opportunities that were available in agronomy and in the collegiate crops judging contest.
I kind of have a different story getting involved in it. I didn't really do agronomy in FFA. I did it my senior year, but I wasn't very good at it by any means. I had a mentor who was on the K-State collegiate crops team when she was in college. And talking with Dr. Donnelly when I started at Kansas State, he encouraged me to do it, and it just kind of went from there.
Yeah, similar to Ashley, I also did the crops contest in FFA, and so that got me interested. And then my older brother was also on the crops team a few years ago, and then pretty much everybody in the College of Ag knows that K-State's known for the crops team, so just wanted to get in on that.
Yeah, you wanted to be a part of the history-winning team. That makes total sense, for sure. So you mentioned that there's a lot of studying that goes into it, and that's on an individual basis, but I'm sure there's some team elements when it comes to preparing for this competition too, right?
Certainly. There is a lot of banter back and forth between many of us while we're practicing. We like to get together as a group as much as we can just to help each other out and make sure we're all on the same page.
Lots of coffee consumed, lots of cookies, candies, things that just make it fun. Because, yeah, it's a contest, and yeah, we take it really serious. But at the end of the day, it's a really cool excuse to hang out with your friends.
We've been talking about the legacy of this competition here at K-State. Did that come with some nerves going into this competition for you guys? Were you nervous?
It was probably one of the more nerve-wracking things I've ever encountered, because when you walk into the contest, yeah, you know that you're prepared because we've spent all this time studying, but it still carries the weight of the 18 national titles that came before you, and we want to live up to that, and we want to continue that legacy for all of the people who come after us. So I definitely would say nerves were a factor. I think Ellie could definitely agree.
I will second what Ashley said. You know, going into competition, you never know what's going to be thrown at you, if something new is going to be in the sample that you haven't seen before. So just kind of thinking about that and thinking, okay, what will I do with this when it is presented with me, and how will it affect my score if I miss it?
I guess the nerves, they help somewhat in a lot of these cases. So it's good to hear you guys are a little bit on edge, but obviously fully capable of getting the job done and winning again. And when any competition like this happens, I feel like there's always good parts, but there's always some bad parts too. So in terms of your favorite parts of competing on the crops judging team here at K-State, what are some of those?
Definitely the teammates and the time that we spend together. It is a great time, and you really just make some good friends.
I could echo that all day long, but I'm going to highlight the memories that we made, because I feel like I have enough stories to write a novel after the past year working with my teammates and all of our awesome coaches. I mean, stories and memories that'll last a lifetime, and certainly some practical knowledge to accompany those.
Yeah, I would also agree with the memories. Being from a small town in north central Kansas, to go to the big city Chicago is something that I'll always remember. Just seeing all the tall buildings is just something I'll never forget.
Sarah, what about you in terms of best parts of this team?
I really enjoyed seeing each of these students grow, not only as a student and their learning capabilities, but just kind of seeing them work together over the semester and helping each other with how to improve upon their scores, or with writing, or just in general, just kind of helping each other out. So that was really great to see. And then also going to Chicago, this is one of the first few times that we've had a whole team that's never been to Chicago, so that was pretty cool to be able to take them to all the different places.
Absolutely. So obviously agronomy is a huge part of this competition, and getting students excited about being involved in agronomy is a huge deal. And Ashley, I think you echoed beforehand that that's a huge passion of yours coming into this, was just, getting students excited about getting involved in agronomy.
Yeah, I think when we give students something that sparks their interest, and for me that was the opportunity to be competitive, but for other students that's opportunities in research, that's opportunities in learning something that you didn't know before, that's opportunities in learning about the environment and the things that we can do to protect and save it. And it's been really cool for me as I've transitioned into the world of agronomy to see how all of these different students have their hearts lit up by that passion that all revolves around plant science, which is pretty cool.
Absolutely. Ellie, you mentioned that, you had someone that inspired you that had previously been on the team. So do you hope to do that again for someone else, hopefully in the future?
Definitely. Just having a mentor who really is somebody that you look up to is nice. And I hope that someday I can be that mentor for somebody else and lead them and maybe even let them win a national championship.
And Jarek, if you had any words of advice for students that were potentially even interested in joining this team in the future, what would you say to them?
Just to be prepared for what's to come. There's a lot of time and just a lot of studying, but also a lot of fun.
Sarah, any words of advice for future coaches to come?
Yeah, so it's going to take a lot of time, definitely, not only for the coaches, but for the students too. And I'd say for the students that are interested, don't be afraid to just go and ask about it. And that's how we get a lot of students that get involved. They just kind of ask a faculty member or even whoever the crops team coach is, they just ask about it. And that kind of gets their foot in the door. And then for any future coaches, assistant or the head coach, just make sure to spend a lot of time with each student. Those are definitely experiences that they'll remember, because spending one-on-one time with a student means a lot more than just being there just in general.
Well, before we wrap this up, I just want to say congratulations again to you guys. And here's hoping for more wins in the future, looking towards number 20, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for being here.
And then I would also like to thank some of our sponsors for our crops team. Our local sponsor is the Kansas Crop Improvement Association. And then we had multiple other sponsors such as Growmark and Corteva that helped sponsor the contest, as well as the American Royal.
Wonderful. Well, definitely a team effort, it sounds like, in terms of making this all possible. So once again, congratulations, you guys, and thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Once again, those were members and the coach of the K-State Collegiate Crops Judging team that split a national title this year, but their 19th title win for K-State at the national competition. We'll be back with more ahead on Agriculture Today. This is Agriculture Today. We are joined now by our new assistant professor of crop science here at K-State. And I say new haphazardly because she was not so new. She was a PhD here before this. And her name is Rachel Veenstra. So Rachel, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Samantha. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So Rachel, I jokingly said you're not so new because you just finished your PhD in December. So first and foremost, congratulations.
Thank you very much. It was an exciting time for sure. The end of a big chapter in my life, and excited to start a new one here at K-State.
So you were a PhD student in agronomy here at K-State. You studied under Dr. Ciampiti, is that correct?
Yes, that's right. I worked with him for the last 4 years and really enjoyed the research and extension opportunities that I had with him when I was a grad student.
So did that play a part in you taking on this new role here at K-State?
So it definitely did. The community that I found at K-State and the different people and resources that the agronomy department has really was something special that I don't think you could find just anywhere. And I knew when I was presented with the opportunity to apply for this job and to continue my time here at K-State that it was definitely something that I wanted to do. So very excited to continue doing that for sure.
With this new position, you're going to be teaching undergraduate students. So what classes are you going to be a part of?
So I'm going to be teaching the introductory crop science class as well as a plant and seed identification course. And then I'll be coming up with another class to teach our undergrad. So I'm excited to develop that and figure out what that's going to be. I'm also a advisor for the Wheat State Agronomy Club, so I'm going to be helping with parking the football games. And then I will be coaching the crops teams. So lots of interactions with our undergrads, and I'm very excited about that.
Wonderful. Well, that crops team has a ton of history. As we're talking now, I just completed an interview with them not too long ago about their recent win. So that's exciting. It's a legacy to continue on there.
Yeah, it's a very special thing. When I was an undergrad, I did not do my undergrad at K-State, and we didn't have a crops team. So coming here and learning that culture and just seeing how excited everyone gets about it, that's just cool. It's neat to be a part of that.
Yeah, very fun and exciting, especially as a new recent PhD grad and a new professor. So that's incredible. So a bit more about your time as a PhD student. You kind of created this brand for yourself almost during your time, and you're the tiller queen is kind of what you go by. Love that.
Yeah. So I would like to clarify that I did not come up with that. I don't have that big of an ego to start calling myself that. But I was posting about my research on Twitter just because I think it's something different. And as a farmer's daughter myself, I really like sharing what I'm doing and how it could be useful for other people. And some farmers on Twitter started calling me the tiller queen, and then my advisor started calling me the tiller queen. It's funny because I have some friends that work at different places across the state, and they'll be at field days or they'll be talking about corn, and someone mentions the tiller queen. They don't know Rachel Veenstra, but they know the tiller queen and they know who that is, and it's fun. It's really fun.
Absolutely. Good branding and a great way to get the message out into the world. So good on you for doing that.
Yeah. It's been a lot of fun. I've had some help too with figuring out the best way to put stuff on social media, learning how to do that. It's been a big source of stress relief, maybe. During graduate school, a fun thing that I felt like I could talk to people that could actually use the research I was doing and trying to make an impact in that way. Helped me on days that maybe I felt like my data analysis or the paragraph that I spent 4 hours working on wasn't doing a whole lot of good, but I could get on Twitter and have some cool conversations with folks, and that made me feel good at the end of the day.
Rewarding for sure, then.
Yes.
It sounds like.
Yes.
Getting into some of your research that you did that led to kind of the creation of the tiller queen, you were a part of writing an extension article about the tillering impacts on corn yields. And I know that this is kind of a debate in Kansas. Are tillers good or are they a bad thing? I'm still sitting here being like, I don't know.
So that's a can of worms. And I actually have a fun story that I'll share about that. So I came to K-State to study this, and when Ignacio, CMPD, first told me what my project was going to be, I kind of looked at him and I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. No one's really studying that. I haven't heard much about that before. My grandpa had told stories about seeing tillers in cornfields when he was growing up and stuff. And I went home for Christmas and they asked me what I was doing in Kansas, and I told them that they were paying me to study tillers in corn, and he kind of looked at me like, what? Who's paying for that? So, and it's a whole big debate because they're not corn tillers, they're corn suckers. That's what everyone calls them. And so when you start talking about tillering in corn at extension events or different things, you get some kind of weird looks from people because it's something a little bit different. And it's a really interesting topic, especially for central and western Kansas, which is very different from southern Missouri, where I grew up. And seeing the low plant populations that we've got out there, the corn, how thin it's planted compared to what breeders are targeting for the I-states, where they get plenty of rain and can really push the intensity of how they're managing that corn. Just seeing how those corn plants will develop differently when they're put at such low populations is really interesting. You start seeing those tillers, those branches coming on, and just what a single corn plant is capable of.
Yeah, interesting research for sure, and unique, like you said. So I feel like that's the best research, when it's like, why hasn't anybody asked this question yet? That's when the best happens.
Yeah. And I think that people have been asking that question, and everyone kind of has their own opinion, and no one's really paid or put the time in to do that kind of research, because it is kind of an odd thing. Nitrogen studies in corn and those types of things are really important. And I think that that's kind of where the focus shifts, is intensifying. How can we make it more intense? But tillers is kind of the opposite direction. Lower populations, less inputs, and how can this impact our systems like what we see in western Kansas, for example.
Sure. So when you talk to producers, what were some of the common themes of conversations? What were some of the questions they mainly asked you?
So questions I would get were usually water related, because in western Kansas, that's a big concern. We had some irrigation on some of our trials, so they weren't true dry land. So we weren't able to answer some of our drought questions maybe we would like to answer, maybe look into in the future. We'll see. But A lot of questions about dry down. If the tillers could put ears on, which they did, which surprises people, the moisture of that grain at the time of harvest, if that would be a concern. And we never found that that was anything to be worried about because the variation within the field was no different than the variation you would find on the plant. Tassel ears is another big thing. Sometimes when you've got a corn plant, the tassel at the top, which is supposed to be all male, has some kernels that develop on it. So it's this weird looking mix of an ear and a tassel at the top of the plant. And tillers are more prone to that than the main shoots in corn are. And we did see some of those in some of our trials. Why is still a question that we don't totally have an answer for, because I wrote my 4 dissertation chapters and ran out of room. But we do have that data, and we'll see where that goes.
With any research, there's always what's next, I guess. And you're luckily enough, you have a research appointment here at K-State still to carry out. So what is next for you?
So that's a great question. I do have a 30% research appointment, so it's 70% teaching and 30% research. And I haven't defined clear studies yet that I'm going to be working on. I am looking forward to collaborating with multiple different people in the agronomy department to try to get my footing and get started. I am really interested in cropping systems where we have to look at plasticity mechanisms and how those can help us be more efficient. And by that, I mean systems like Western Kansas, where we have less water, we have to drop the plant population, and we're really trying to explore how we can maximize what those plants can do for us, what we can get from the limited resources that we have, and really focusing on finding ways to let the plants do what they do best and figuring out how to manage that most efficiently and effectively, especially with the changes that we're seeing in weather and precipitation and all the talk about the aquifer depletion and irrigation concerns and all of those types of things. So lots of challenges that we're being met with, and I think there's a lot of opportunities to find ways, maybe not to intensify what we're doing, but to be smarter with what we do have.
With challenges always comes great new opportunities, so that's great to hear that you have that mindset. And I know that you don't have an extension appointment per se, but that's still something you really enjoy doing. So are you continuing your social media presence in the same way that you kind of have during your PhD?
Yes, so I'm looking forward to continuing that. I found that that was a great way for me to feel like I was making an impact. Like I mentioned, on days that maybe weren't as good as others. And it's a way that allows me to connect with producers across Kansas and across the world, and also to connect with prospective K-State students, people who could benefit from the resources that K-State has to offer. So yes, continuing on Twitter, continuing on social media. I'm working on a new website too. So lots of stuff that I'm looking forward to working on. And then also jumping in when I can to help with corn schools and other events. I'm actually headed to St. Louis next week for a meeting with the National Corn Growers Association. A group of growers is going to be there, so looking forward to that. Just little opportunities to connect with farmers and other people across the state.
Wonderful. Well, I'm sure you won't be a stranger to the show either, so we look forward to hopefully having you on again in the future. But Rachel, thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll link to all of your social media and that extension publication that you were a part of showing no yield penalties from tillers in the show notes of today's program, which can be found on agtoday.net. But once again, just thank you so much.
Thank you, Samantha. It was great to be here.
Absolutely. Well, once again, everybody, that was Rachel Veenstra. She's the Assistant Professor of Crop Science here at K-State, joining us to talk about her new position and some of her research on tillers and corn. We'll be back with more ahead on Agriculture Today.
This is Agriculture Today. Along with Samantha Bennett, I'm Jeff Wickman. For avid gardeners, January, with its less than perfect weather, can be a long, uneventful month. However, K-State Research and Extension Horticulture Agent for Riley County, Gregg Eyestone, says that planting and starting vegetable and flower transplants from seed can make the month pass much quicker and help satisfy the urge to be doing some type of gardening. Greg, we can't really be out in the garden this time of year, but we can actually get a start on the gardening season by getting some seed ready to go.
Yeah, it's a fun time of the year, I think, for gardening if you like to see things growing and sprouting, and you can do this indoors, which is kind of convenient for us. Just as long as you have some temperatures and lighting, you can be quite successful doing it if you'd like to.
What do we look at, I guess, first of all, just for getting this whole process started?
Yeah, so it does take some equipment. You may have read in articles, you may see about starting them on the south window sill or something like that. And I don't know if anybody's had real success with that here in Kansas anyway. So it does take a little bit of equipment, but nothing that's too costly or unusual to find. My old system used to use fluorescent tubes, and that still is a viable system. I still use it after 40 years. Probably using some more LED kind of lighting, which gives you a few more options and probably a little bit more energy efficient over time. So things we're looking for is enough light output. So if you're looking on a new label of your lighting system, something with 2,000 lumens is probably going to give you enough energy for those young plants to get going and viable so you can move them out into the garden later in the season. So something around 2,000, 2,500 lumens will give you enough light energy to go in there. Wavelength is the other item on light, so they do it in Kelvins nowadays. 5,000 Kelvins is kind of the blue light. If you were to looking at an old fluorescent type of bulb, that's fine for that vegetative growth. 3,000 Kelvins is what we use for starting flowers and seed production, which is something we're not necessarily looking to do indoors usually. And so you don't have to get that red spectrum that we have in the light wavelengths. A grow light, old-fashioned kind of terminology, is fine. It's going to give you all kinds of wavelengths there. Some of them the plants don't use. I wouldn't spend more money for a grow light because we're just looking at something in that 5,000 Kelvin range. The lighting system is going to have a big impact on your plant growth and development, but we can get away with some of the wavelengths that are necessary just for that vegetative stage.
And the temperature is going to be more than probably what we want to keep our home at during the winter.
To get them started, that's for sure. We see better seed sprouting from a warmer, 70 is kind of a routine temperature, which is usually maybe a little warmer than some places indoors. 80 may be a better temperature for your seeds to germinate. So typically we use a heating pad that is designed for this growing, water resistant and those kind of things. If this is something you're going to do for a long time, it's probably worth the investment of getting a heating pad unit for you so you can regulate that temperature. Why it's important, you get more of your seed will germinate, more viable seed will come up. It'll be more routine or all together at the same time, which kind of gives you that uniformity that's nice. And so there's reasons to get a heat pad. Obviously, you don't have to, but if you're kind of wanting to do this over long term, I think it'd be a good investment. The other key to that temperature is we usually like to do it warm to get them germinated, but then we cool them down as they grow. Otherwise, they get real tall and lanky and not very quality plants. And that's usually like 60, 65 degrees, which is maybe an unused bedroom or something like that for temperature-wise. So we start them warm, and then we cool them off as they're starting to grow. And, of course, your light system kind of needs to raise as your plants get taller. So I also did a K-State Garden Hour session on this topic last February. So if you go to our K-State Garden Hour website and scroll down to February of 2022, you can find that recording. It has some information on there as well. So there's lots of resources out there. There's also a video out there on our Kansas Healthy Yards website on developing your own light system for starting seeds. So there's some resources out there for sure.
That's K-State Research and Extension Horticulture Agent for Riley County, Gregg Eyestone, with tips for starting garden transplants from seed. Additional information can be found on K-State's Horticulture and Natural Resources webpage, hnr.k-state.edu. And that'll do it for this edition of Agriculture Today. For Samantha Bennett, I'm Jeff Wickman. This is the K-State Radio Network.